At first, when I heard about the assignment, I was really scared. I thought, oh my goodness, math and English should not mix because, I mean, it just felt really weird to me.
So I'm here with Tom Heilman, who's an upper school English teacher at Washington International School, and Tom has actually come to my office on numerous occasions to share a variety of things, everything from technology to the use of thinking routines. And today we're going to be talking about sort of an interdisciplinary project that was done in English class involving the use of the geometric sort of constraints or the form of triangles and incorporating that as providing a structure for writing. I'm probably not explaining this the best way, but that's why we have Tom here. And Tom, I guess before we jump into this, prior to this interview, you had mentioned something regarding that in English classes, you rarely have the opportunity to build things. And this obviously has to be some sort of metaphor because you're building things, maybe not physically, but I think you're often building things in English class. You're building arguments, and I guess I want to give you a chance to explain what you meant by in English class you're rarely building things.
Yeah, because of course we are building things, and we're reading and studying things that were built when we're talking about the literature, and the students spend a lot of time building essays, building commentaries, So in effect, we are building those things, but I wanted to go beyond that, outside of the realm of what they're used to in terms of putting together an outline, putting together a plan, and creating a written argument, which they probably don't really view as building something anymore. I wanted them to actually walk away with something. It sounds silly to say I wanted them to walk away with something they could carry when we're talking about a geometric figure like a triangle, but you can. And it is something physical. That's what I wanted.
And I kind of put it off a lot till the very last minute, and then I finally just looked at it, and I was like, well, this is actually kind of interesting. And then I came up with my idea, and I played around with it, and it really gave me a deeper understanding of the play and of Hamlet's character. And it also, like I said before, it just helps me defend an argument better because I had to.
So can you show us this triangle? I think this is a good time to actually jump into that. And we're going to use the Explain Everything app to do this on the iPad. Tom has used this before in his class, and we're just going to use this to illustrate this triangle. So go ahead. You can just pick up that
Sure. The nature, first of all, the nature of the assignment was this. I gave the students the assignment after the first act of Hamlet, and I told them the product would be due shortly after the end of the play. And so they knew it was coming, and they had a good long time because we spent a long time on the play here. They could focus on any aspect of the play they wanted, a minute aspect, the whole play, as long as they came up with a triangle that worked. And it needs to work in this
record button, right?
Is it on?
I think we're going. It looks like we're
Yeah.
going. Okay.
Needs to work in this respect, and I'm just going to rough something out here. So let's just say we have a right triangle going there, and let's say I decided to play around with the idea of, say, sexuality in Hamlet. Not a main issue in there, but it's there, and it sort of runs the whole course of the play. So the triangle would need to work like this. If, for example, and I'm just going to abbreviate, well, I'll do a quick little Hamlet. If this side would represent Hamlet's attitudes or actions towards sexuality, and they would have to label that as sexuality there. And this would be Ophelia's side with sexuality, and let's say Polonius's side down here with sexuality. The way that I Love a Triangle works is it's always the union of two sides that creates or affects the other side. So somehow the student would have to, in a written defense of this argument, deal with the idea that the union of Ophelia's involvement in sexuality in the play, and Polonius would somehow create or affect Hamlet's. And indeed it does, because Polonius is very worried about the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia is caught in the middle between Polonius, and her own desires here. So it does affect or create Hamlet, but it has to create Hamlet in the same terms of something to do with sexuality. Also, you would have to deal with the idea that Hamlet's sexuality in Polonius affects or creates Ophelia's side, and then that Ophelia's sexuality and Hamlet's sexuality in effect creates that side there. In addition, the student would have to justify the creation of a right angle there, the largest angle creating the largest side. And if this were an isosceles triangle and these were 45-degree angles here, would have to justify those 45-degree angles, or if that was a 30-degree angle and that was a 60-degree angle, why each angle was a different side, why Polonius was at the base. So when I was talking earlier about building something, it's more than just labeling a triangle, it's understanding how complex, how interrelated everything is. They get to decide whether they're going to build an isosceles triangle, an equilateral triangle, a scalene triangle, and within all of those create their own dimensions and interrelationships. That's the triangle.
Okay, so you recently had this triangle assignment in Mr. Heilman's English class, and if you could just talk about the triangle you elected to construct your argument around, and talk about the theme, and just tell me about your triangle.
Okay, well, I titled my triangle The Three Sides of Hamlet. And it was a right isosceles triangle, so a right angle and two 45-degree angles. The side lengths were, the legs were each 10 centimeters, and the hypotenuse was the root of 200 centimeters, or 14.14 repeating centimeters. And, the two legs were, first of all, the marriage between Claudius and Gertrude, so Hamlet's mother and uncle, and the other leg was the death of King Hamlet, Hamlet's father, and the potential apparition of his ghost. And then the hypotenuse was Hamlet's madness, or basically internal struggle over whether or not to act against his uncle Claudius. And so the basis of this triangle basically is that it's the three main occurrences or themes in the play. So the biggest angle, the right angle, creates the hypotenuse, and so the two sides that create that are the remarriage of his mother to his uncle and the death of his father. Both from the very beginning of the play are maddening to Hamlet because his father is dead, and his mother is remarried, and Hamlet is really at odds over what to do, and then when the ghost comes into play and says that maybe his uncle killed his father, then that drives him even more crazy, and so the entire play basically is about him thinking about what he should do to deal with his uncle about his father's death.
So with this structure, how would you say this deepens the learning of your students in the understanding of the overall play? I mean, or is this really only deepening their understanding of a theme and specific characters, or is this meant to be more of a? I can see how it's going in deeper, but I'm just curious as to how do you see this as a demonstration of students showing deeper learning? I mean, it's pretty obvious, I guess, but I guess I'd like to explain.
Yeah. I'll explain it. As I said, they have the choice of either focusing on a smaller aspect of the play and really into illustrating how all those elements are interrelated, or taking a larger issue and explaining how those are interrelated. Now, Hamlet is a very complex play, and there's a lot going on in that play. As I said, we spend a bit of time on it. But what I was looking for in this assignment is a student coming out of it and taking full command of one aspect of the play.
Okay, so my triangle focused mainly on Hamlet and his dynamics. And I chose an isosceles triangle because I thought that these two sides, Hamlet's pretended sanity and his silence, were equal factors in exerting force onto his rage and creating his rage.
And do you feel that you have a deeper understanding of Hamlet's rage because of, or in part because of doing this activity?
Yeah, I think after working for quite a while on the dynamics between the characters and within the characters, I kind of see how Shakespeare really made them quite 3D, especially Hamlet, and I think that I definitely understand him a lot more.
If they could do that, if they could successfully do this and all those sides are consistently used, for example, some students struggled a bit here that at times, you know, this side would change. It wouldn't be Hamlet's sexuality. They would just label it, sorry, I forgot how to erase here.
That's fine.
They would just label that as Hamlet and at times use that as Hamlet's sexuality, but then also Hamlet's anger. So they weren't showing a full command of how those things were interrelated. Those students who could come out of this with a full command, I felt great about that, and that's exactly what I was looking for, whether it was full command of a minor aspect or a large major aspect of the play. They showed command of it. They had to think quite a lot. Quite a lot of the learning from this triangle is actually not from the triangle that's created. Many students would come to talk to me about their triangle in process, their drafts and this and that. So a great deal of the learning is in what they discarded, what they had to reject because it wouldn't fit, it just wouldn't work.
Were you trying to put like a square through a round hole, or were you able to write as freely as you wanted it to and it kind of just meshed with the requirements, or did you have to step back and rethink your approach?
Well, as I was getting to this idea, I went through different other ideas. At first I had a family dynamic between him, his uncle, and his mother, and all along, I mean, sometimes I was really trying to force it to fit, but the second I got to this idea, it just kind of came together really well, and so that's how I knew this idea was going to be my final one, because everything actually worked out.
So, you know, in tossing away ideas, you're still doing quite a bit of learning because you're realizing, oh, this thematic concept doesn't really go hand in hand with that thematic concept or character concept to create that. So sometimes a lot of the learning is what's not there. It's all in the process. And I would wager that every student went through quite a lengthy process and quite a lot before they came up with their actual product here.
We've never been asked to do anything like this involving math and English together, so it was challenging because you had to think about using like proper math terms that made sense, but I myself, I wasn't sure as to how in depth I would have to go about like the math part of it, so that also is a big reason for why I wanted to choose an equilateral triangle, because it would be much simpler to explain something that's all equal. Or I was going to do maybe an isosceles triangle with two sides that were equal, just so it would be simpler to explain. Like scalene triangle, even though that would be a good idea with the different lengths showing like different like importances in like ascending order, that would be much harder to explain because of the math part. And like someone else did unambiguous case one, which is way too complex, and I feel that if I had done something like that, it would have made it much more difficult to elaborate and explain the different aspects of it. So I feel that my writing, given the triangle that I chose, it was less affected by the math part, but still.
How do I make thinking visible without those obvious routines, even if they're subtly integrated into my curriculum? And this approach, this approach with the triangle, I think, is a perfect example of achieving that next level where something is really visible, but it goes well beyond that sort of initial first layer routine, like see, think, wonder.
It's a great project, like it's a really cool idea, but I felt like it was almost like making us do something so specific then I felt like, why can't we like venture off, maybe like try a different shape, not just a triangle, so that we're not just like, okay, you have 3 sides, you have 3 angles, you need to make that side with that side equal that side, and like, it's like, I like the concept, but I feel like if you were trying to like pick a shape maybe, or even like you can make up your own shape and make it like a name for the shape and have like its own design and explain why did I pick this, because I feel like the triangle, it's very narrowed down to one thing, so I felt that like there was a sense of being restrained, and I feel like I would have preferred to venture off a little bit.
Now, having said that, this is interesting. Do you feel that you have a deeper understanding now of Hamlet, having gone through that struggle, having like torn your mind
Yes.
apart, saying, you know, this has to work because of this? Maybe you weren't happy with the assignment, but do you feel now that 4 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to remember your triangle because of that struggle? Like,
Yes, I mean, yeah, the struggle kind of nailed Hamlet into my mind, so I won't be forgetting it. But, and I mean, I'm probably now having that, I might, in future when I'm looking at other books, I might actually even try and connect ideas that way.
I started this assignment actually with my 12th graders last year, and I linked it to Shakespeare's Othello. This year I'm using it with my 10th graders. But I was motivated to do it for sort of 2 reasons that quickly combined. I noticed that a lot of the times I'm an advisor and there's a lot of downtime in classes, and I hang around the library quite a bit, and students talk about mathematics here all the time, right? They're talking about what they're doing in class, they're talking about interesting solutions to problems, they're talking about different ways of solving problems. So I picked up on the fact that we have a very solid and vital mathematics program here. And I've always been interested in interdisciplinary work. So that was one thing that motivated me to start thinking, how can I bring mathematics into an approach towards literature? Because there seems a natural connection, right? Both are in their own rights, languages, both operate on languages, both can be used to communicate concrete things, abstract things. So it seems a very, very logical transition from mathematics into English. And when I was teaching my 12th graders, I was teaching a standard level class, and many of the students there were taking higher level mathematics. Not to say they weren't exceptional students in English as well, but a lot of their energies were going into higher level mathematics. So I thought about channeling some of that energy into English assignments or writing assignments that weren't purely driven by writing.
I mean, I don't think it helped to give the structure, but I didn't feel it was constraining. I mean, it was really fun because English and math are like 2 of my favorite subjects, so I really enjoyed triangles. I like triangles a lot, so I didn't feel it was constraining. It was actually kind of like once you decided on a topic and you decided like basic 3 sides, everything kind of fell into place.
So it is almost like a domino effect where you start tipping over ideas and, oh, this one works, this here I can add this, sort of that sort of process? Okay.
I mean, I liked it a lot. I also liked it because it was a good connection to another, educational forum. You had math and English working together, and you had to find a way to apply themes or in some cases occurrences in the play and connect them through just another educational forum.
Do you think 4 years from now you'll remember your triangle?
I think I will because I like the play a lot, and I think I'll remember it because those were the 3 main themes, and I liked what I did right from the get-go. When I had my idea, I thought it was a good one. So yeah, I think I'll definitely remember it.
Another thing that made me think about doing this was one time in, I think it was 12th grade again, we were discussing Robert Frost's poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And without missing a beat, one of the students just yelled out in class, you can explain that poem using an economic model of supply and demand. She said, I can work up a supply-demand graph real fast that explains that poem. And I thought, oh my God, if there, I don't see that, but if that's where her mind goes, let's go there and see where it goes, because obviously she's made that connection, and it was very quick and solid connection, and it wasn't a trivial connection. It wasn't like this in the poem stands for supply and this stands for demand. The poem deals with the pull of two forces, in that does the speaker stay in one place, or does he go to where responsibility is calling him? And so she was able to integrate those economic concepts into that thematic concept, and actually she went further and integrated her understanding of the rhythm and the rhyme scheme, associating those with supply and demand as well. And it got very complicated and very interesting. But more than the results of that, I noticed two things. One, how vital her discussion was, how much fun she was having with it, and how instantly most of the class got involved with it. So those are the two things that got me motivated to try and bring in a different approach to an understanding of Shakespeare, something mathematic.